as you know too, as we age, the component of trying to go faster, running a 10K faster or cycling faster or swimming faster, it sort of falls out of the equation, and we tend to gravitating into going longer, or like you said, seeing the world, seeing Mother Nature more, a little more relaxed, lower heart rate. But sustainability is the key word, is sustainability. And even in life, like you say, the sustainability to be functional and reap the best benefits of being alive, that's pretty much the same thing. That's what it's about.
Okay, welcome everyone to our Longevity Advantage video. Today, our guest is Cal Zaryski. Cal and I go back, oddly enough, on parallel paths, but not necessarily holding hands. Don't get weird on me now. We both spent time in Calgary. That's home to Cal for many years, but I was there for a number of years when I did my best training, and Cal was one of the local heroes then. So we've found a way to stay in touch over these years. So Cal, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Scott. And yeah, we go back. That was quite a few years ago. I keep sort of reflecting back in the past, and now I realize that I'm fairly old now, which is quite enlightening, isn't it?
Well, I'm not. If I do this, but
Yeah.
I think so. That's a great thing off the top, right? We may be a little slower, but we're still doing all the same things that we did, and there's no sign of anything going away. I just as we'll get off on a tangent here real quick. Somebody else who's 51, a doctor colleague of mine, posted she just hiked 13,000 feet and skied down a double black diamond for her 51st birthday, and she's only just really finding her stride. And that's, I would say, of things that people like you and I see this as. This is real, right? This isn't made up. This is what life can be for many years if you kind of lay the groundwork. So,
yep, absolutely.
So with that, why don't you kind of give us a bit of your background and kind of help folks understand where you're coming from?
Yeah, well, I'm a full-time endurance and health lifestyle coach. And so I got on that pathway when I was quite young. I grew up in Penticton, BC, the beautiful Okanagan. And it was there that I actually started to embark on some endurance type activities. Growing up as a soccer player, I found that, hey, I wanted to do something on my own as an individual sport. And I just fell into triathlons. And so that's how I started doing my multi-sport sort of development. I was a non-swimmer. Goodness me, it was horrific. I just couldn't barely swim that 1 kilometer swim or whatever that distance was for the event, but I chipped away at it. And I was a good runner and decent biker. So that's kind of where I grew up. And I just kind of fell into this idea of helping people achieve sort of that endurance side of sport, if you want to call it that, because I went down that pathway. And then eventually I moved to Calgary and did my undergrad here at the university, and sort of came out of that thinking I was going to be a teacher. But I found that I enjoyed working with adults and kind of, again, spreading the message about endurance and health. And so I finally decided that I would go back to school and do my master's degree again at the University of Calgary. The reason why I stayed at the same institution is that we came off of the 1988 Olympics, and we had incredible facilities, as you know. I mean, just top world-class facilities. And so I stayed here, and we brought in many world-class professors as well. And so 2 years later, I was pretty much certified in most endurance specialists with a master's degree. And then it was at that time I decided to sort of offer the community a professional training guidance or coaching. And so since that time, gosh, it's been 30 some years working professionally with people. And I think really reflecting back, I was one of the first people in Canada to offer that. So it's been a while, and I've seen thousands of different projects in my days.
Yeah, and I'm sure lots of people come and go, right? It's an area where people try it for a while and they just don't have the longevity, if you'll pardon the pun, to see it through, because there is so much required to be able to really really thrive in this area. So yeah, it's a testament to your depth and commitment and your ability to work with people.
Yeah, thank you.
And I would say on that as well is you have a long list of personal achievements of I remember when we were talking earlier before we got on about Steve King. You know, there's a few people you kind of find in life, you hear about them long before you meet them. And so, you know, you were a name to me that came up regularly. So I kind of felt like before we ever met, like I already knew a fair bit about parts of you, at least from the athletic side of it. And certainly a number of people you coach, but you have, and you know, maybe you can get to whichever order you want to go. Even just in the last week, I know we kind of commented on something you've done, just to give folks a flavor of what your own background is. We'll kind of talk beyond that, but obviously just in terms of the athletic achievements.
Yeah, as I said, I developed as a triathlete coming from Penticton, and I wasn't that great, to be honest. At the beginning, in the inception of it, I was sort of mid-pack kind of range, but I realized I had potential, which is great, and I really enjoyed it. You've got to enjoy the training. The beauty about triathlon, swimming, biking, and running, there's going to be one of those disciplines where there needs to be more time spent and the challenge and the reward at the end. So I found myself getting better and better. And the next thing I know, I was making and qualifying for the age group team for triathlon. And as we know, triathlon's beautiful because it does have age groups whereby every 5 years, you can qualify for the Canadian national team and then jet off to a world championship around the world. And that's something that's very unique about a sport, is being able to participate at that level as an age grouper. And I just kept developing, and lo and behold, I was starting to place. And the next thing you know, I got to be a pretty dominant force in triathlon in my age group, and even won a few races overall. But then I stumbled across another race event, which is still multi-sport, called XTERRA. And XTERRA was the perfect combination for myself because I grew up also doing a little bit of mountain biking. And it's very difficult to find a triathlete that knows how to mountain bike or a mountain biker that knows how to swim. And I had both of those assets. So goodness me, I think it was back in 2004, I went to the first World XTERRA Championships in Hawaii. And not expecting anything, I was able to get a silver medal in my age group. So I fell in love with that sport, and I just really, really adore it. So from there on, I think I've done 14 world championships, and now I have 9 world titles. And I'm 1 title away from the world most to tie it. And then, of course, 2 from being the outright owner. So that's kind of my secret life goal, is to keep chipping away. And as you know, like longevity, the goal is for me to stay healthy, consistent, and motivated so that I can potentially go back and earn 2 more world championships. And I'm not sure if I'll retire after that, but that's pretty much my claim to fame, is I'm the XTERRA guy in Canada. And of course I do other things as well, but that's sort of my claim to fame.
Yeah, it's well, and those things, I think with everything in life, particularly for a lot of us, having 1 or 2 goals out in front of us is so helpful, right? It keeps you kind of worrying less about what's going on today. Say, I'm just working towards something. And I would say that's, I think when we talked before about this, I think that's one of the really common things with endurance sports and longevity, is there's a familiarity and a comfort with, I like having some kind of plan in place. It doesn't have to be overly detailed, but it's a legitimate plan, and I'm working towards some specific goals. And if we think about, I'm sure when you work with athletes, you probably go through that same exercise, right? Let's kind of map out some goals and how we're going to make progress. And it's not, and adapt as you go forward, right?
Absolutely. A plan is critical. And then developing, whether it's a macro cycle or a micro cycle, whatever it is. So micro being very, very detailed for the week. And then there's something in the middle called mesocycle, which would be every month. And then the macro cycle could be up to 3 months, for instance. But yeah, it's the same idea. It's planning. That's all it is. And, people do get used to having some structure. And, we talked about this before with his COVID, with a lot of uncertainty. Like, goodness me, you hear all around the grumblings of triathletes trying to get pool time and swimming. it's really, really difficult, but yet we're able to so-called adapt. And that's what I've been taking my athletes through, is we're doing lots of dry land training and just hoping for, again, venues to open up. And, it's all part of mapping things out. Like you said, yeah, it's important.
Yeah, it's probably a good time for people selling endless pools.
Good point.
Yeah,
Ah,
let me just circle back just to give people a flavor of what the facilities are in Calgary, because they truly are exceptional. Um, so I was fortunate. I lived by the Talisman Center, which so you can probably talk about that. But I literally could get up in the morning, and it was a 5-minute walk from my door uh, to the Talisman Center. So just give folks a flavor of that and kind of some of the other facilities around, and maybe the pathways, because Calgary from a training standpoint is
yes.
just an absolute mecca.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Talisman Center, or now it's called Repsol. Obviously, indoor track, massive pools. They actually added another training pool, 50-meter training pool, lots of weight training and all that sort of thing. So it's pretty much the best environment for an endurance athlete, or any athlete for that matter, to train at. And if it's 3 blocks from your home, I mean, you can't beat that, of course. At this point in time, we actually have 4 or 5 world-class facilities. And again, coming off the 1988 Olympics, we've got the Calgary Olympic Oval, which is an indoor skating facility, but it has a 450-meter track, 2 lanes that we can run around with stairs and that sort of thing. So that's been a blessing, having that facility, particularly as because our winters are nasty. They're very, very cold. And then same thing with pools. We have quite a number of pools at which we can usually get to and swim. And Calgary too, for a triathlete, like, we do have a lot of private lakes. And so if you have access to those lakes, you don't have to drive that far to get access to open water swimming. And then the beauty of it really is the fact that we have mountain ranges from Kananaskis right into the heart of our Canadian Rockies within 45 minutes to an hour drive. And I think that's where most of us now are spending most of our times, to be honest. And like you mentioned, our pathway system here, I mean, I think I went for a gravel so-called bike ride last year, and I put in 80 kilometers, and it was all city pathway. Just to give you an idea. And that. It's just incredible. The only issues that we have now with COVID is that, as you know, everybody has a bicycle nowadays, which is fantastic. That's walking. They all have dogs. So use of these pathways is getting a little bit crowded, as you know. So we just have to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, no, it's a really unique place. When I travel around and try to take my bike where I go, and it's incredibly unique in that regard. Tell us a little bit about Critical Speed, because that, I think, is a brand now that, again, attribute to how long you've been at it, but maybe for folks who don't know about it, kind of how did that come to be, and just let us know what it is.
Yeah, well, Critical Speed, actually, I did my master's thesis on a concept called critical speed and critical power. So if you were to Google that, you could see that, it's a bit of a defining intensity for a certain time frame. And I actually published a paper with my professor, Dr. David Smith. And so that's how the name came about. But it was about 1990, 1992 that I decided that I was going to offer, again, an organization to the community that would help endurance athletes in particular train for their events. So we had lots of runners that wanted to qualify for Boston, or many triathletes that would love to get to the Ironman in Hawaii on the Big Island. And, I just thought, what, there's got to be something that I can offer to help these people. And so the company of Critical Speed pretty much was founded. And yeah, most of my focus has been with endurance athletes. But along the way, obviously, I'd have health projects, people that, again, are trying to capture the power of active living is a great slogan, but that's the truth. And they just don't know how to get there. And then another stream that I went down with is working with cancer survivors as well. So really trying to get that functionality back after surviving the barbaric treatment of cancer, right? And it's not easy. And it's a very bad predicament to be in when you're lacking energy, massive fatigue, and really you can't even work. So my company primarily is endurance events, but certainly I have other areas with my master's degree that I'm able to focus in on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think it's one of the big attractions to multi-sport is that it's so accommodating, it's so inclusive. You don't have to specialize in any one of them to really enjoy it, and you can you can kind of have one that's your favorite, and the other ones you just show up. When you're
Yeah.
saying about training your weak sport, for me, triathlon was the swim.
Yeah.
And so I decided, okay, I'm really going to work at it. I really kind of got worked hard to find a couple of good coaches to work with. And this, in successive years, the more I worked at it, the slower I got.
Yeah,
So I decided duathlon was really my sport.
absolutely. But that's okay. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. And
Yep.
I find swimming is one of those things where, obviously there's a steep learning curve. And then once you get going, you kind of have to keep the frequency going. You need to swim 3, maybe 4, up to 5 times a week. And they don't have to be long, but it's just an environment where you need to frequently get into. And many, many people don't like jumping into cold water. I mean, it's not the best environment. You got to drive to the pool. There are some hassles versus stepping out your door and going for a walk, a run, or even for that matter, a bike ride is so much easier. So I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think my best success is when I lived literally right next to the pool
Yeah.
because it was so convenient. Yeah, I think then, and I could run right on the pathway. I could do a 3-hour run easily from where I lived and go do 1 or 2 loops around the reservoir and come back home. And
Yep.
it just, you don't find that many places, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So talk to me a little bit about athletes. Obviously, you've worked with quite a range. You mentioned some cancer survivors, and then I assume probably a range of athletes over different ages with different goals. Kind of give us a flavor of what you've learned watching them and maybe some of their experiences.
Yeah, I mean, one case comes to note. I think I sent an Instagram post out just recently about a man, 2 people actually, that climbed Mount Everest in 1997. And specifically, I worked with one gentleman, Alan Hobson. And so it was about a year that I was kind of working with him, developing again the right training program, really dissecting what is needed for them to climb Mount Everest in a physical standpoint, and the altitude and all those scientific parameters. And we put together a training program, worked at it hard, and that's how I got involved into doing a high altitude scrambling, or even snowshoeing for that matter. It was during that time. But he went to Everest in 97, was able to summit, and became the 10th Canadian to climb Mount Everest. And like, we were pretty dialed in with how the way his body was responding to the training, and of course accomplishing that goal. But it was within 2 years later, he rang me up and suggested, hey, look, something's wrong. And I know what my heart rate typically is when I go outside and run my 6 minute per kilometer or 5:30 kilometer pace. He says, but my heart rate's been 15 or 20 beats higher. And so we circled back, collected some data from that point of training leading up to Everest. And I said, well, why don't you go to a track, a relatively closed and controlled environment, and run at a certain speed. So in that case, it was a certain speed of, say, 6 minutes per kilometers, and let's measure your heart rate. And so we did that 2 or 3 times. And in fact, yes, it was definitely elevated. So the next procedure was, I just said, hey, look, let's go get some blood work. So off he went and got some blood work. And 2 days later, it came back that he actually had a blood cancer. So, in that regard, it's more about knowing your body, is know about, whether or not it's healthy or functioning properly. And as an athlete, we tend to be super in tune with the way we're functioning. And if it wasn't for him sort of reaching out and saying something is wrong, I know myself, I know that there's something up here, and putting a little bit of science to it, meaning heart rate. We caught his cancer so early that he survived. He got a bone marrow transplant from his brother Eric, and goodness me, within, I think it was a year of treatment, he was right back to being healthy and super active. So that's a big there's a big lesson there for sure. Just know your body and be active, and just, you're in tune with things.
It's well, again, we talk about where the parallels cross over, and that's a piece that I actually talk about in my courses, is a dashboard. And it really is the same thing, transferring the information that I've learned myself through training. I had the same experience, I had a health experience last year. I was able to go back literally 10 years, almost to the day, almost to the same distance run, same heart rate, and looked at it and said, something's not matching up here. Right?
Yeah.
And it turns out that I had another test result that was kind of funky, and so that's what caused me to go back and dig. But it
Yeah.
is the value of having some data to look at. And there's in the world of health now, we have access to so much more data. And it's like, why wouldn't you use it? Like if you had a watch to know the time, well, wouldn't you maybe want to use that? And there's
Yep.
so much more data available now that people just don't realize. And I think a lot of doctors even don't think people want to bother with it. But once you get some understanding what data makes sense
Yep.
based on what you're looking for, it can really save you a lot of trouble. I'm really glad you brought that up.
Mhm.
It's a very strong point, and almost nobody does. I've put together a dashboard that, depending on what you want to look at, you want to look at heart, you want to look at general conditioning, overall aging rates. There's all sorts of things that we can look at now.
Yep.
When I know when I was big in triathlon, like my spreadsheets were just a little crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's the engineer, right? So wants
Yeah.
to analyze everything.
And that's fair. Performance spreadsheets or comparisons, great. But, like you said, if you're really in tune with yourself and you have some data, and that means getting regular checkups, as you know, getting blood work, getting the printouts, being very responsible for your own health, and then obviously circling back to the professionals and really getting a consensus of, why am I feeling so poorly? This is not normal for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of throw in a pitch for anybody who's thinking about that and getting blood work. Get C-reactive protein. I can't believe the number of doctors who don't order it. It's kind of the best overall indication of inflammation, and it can
Wow.
indicate any number of things. CRP, it costs virtually nothing. It's one of the best leading indicators of overall health.
Yeah.
And that number's under 1, you're in real good shape. But it's easy.
Yeah.
It's one more box to check and gives you another look into, is there anything going on inside your body that you might just want to start to explore. It doesn't mean there's anything drastically wrong,
Yeah.
but it's these things that kind of can creep up on us that we just don't know about until
Yeah.
suddenly there's a symptom, and by then it's obviously progressed a lot further.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've been at this a while, as longer than me, and you've certainly done loops around anything I've ever done. But we all go through this, and I think you and I have both kind of been around and with the number of the pros and different things too. But
Mm.
um, I think some people are of the view of athletics are really for young people, or a lot of pros have a difficult time when their pro career comes to an end, is what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Kind of take me through the psychology of that, because you've obviously lived through that, and you've continued to adapt over your career, and you've seen others deal with it too.
Yeah. And, I am going through that now. I'm going through the point where my outcome performance expectations were, placing in an overall fashion. But certainly now I'm a 52, turning 53 here. Um, it's a little unrealistic. And the other thing to note is, like, even if I was capable and with mental toughness and grit to get to that point, there has to be an awareness of how much cost, how much wear and tear, and potentially a formula that's causing ill health for me to drive my body in that fashion. So I'm in a unique situation where I can take a nap at 2 o'clock. I have the ability of creating my entire day. I can train in the morning, nap, and then train at night. But I'm getting to the point and realizing that I don't necessarily need to do more. I have to be very, very smart about the training I do, but more isn't better at this point in my 50s. Now, that might even apply for anyone in the 40 plus categories, where we're a little bit more intuitively smart in the sense of, well, my body's not feeling good. I don't think that loading or adding stress is going to make any difference. And so I'm stepping back a little bit more and being a bit more cognitive, and a little bit more into the planning of what I think would be best for me. And I can relate to somebody like a professional athlete that, again, is into those age categories whereby they're no longer competing as a pro, but they still love sport. They still want to challenge themselves and potentially even learn about how they're regressing in their performances. but they're going to have to mentally let go of those ultimate outstanding outcomes per se, you know, placing on the podium in an overall category. So I think you just need to step back and you need to say, okay, what am I doing this for? And I need to enjoy it with the bigger approach that health before fitness. And that was a Dr. Phil Maffetone statement, of course, that I studied under. And he just said, never sacrifice your health for any fitness performance gains. And that's how I live my life. Yeah.
That's interesting. And we've talked about this before. And I wanted to, it's a good setup. I wanted to circle back to it because it was a question for older athletes in particular around how much is too much.
Yeah.
And this has been debated a lot. And so actually I've talked to two cardiologists about the sport cardiologists since you and I last spoke. And it is fairly clear now that there definitely is too much. You can go too far because in particular, it's the endurance seems to be the bigger issue more than the intensity. And so it's the person who wants to do a marathon every week or, you know, do them back to back. And certainly in the world of ultra, I think those would be the places where we are seeing now some of the, particularly the heart risks. So it's the chemicals the heart starts to give off late in the fatigue aspect of the exercise that is now kind of contributing to the damage. And again, it's a bit of a chronic condition, right? It's that slow damage over time that does damage the heart. So the exercise is great. And for the general public, this is not of anything to be concerned about. You and I know about overtraining, but that's a very small percentage of the population that needs to worry about overtraining. If you're into endurance, that's the place. But the average person overtraining is never anything they need to worry about. But it is, I think the point you make is, why do you exercise at any age? Right? If you're not being paid, you know, millions of dollars to into your bank account, then you better be thinking about why you're doing it. And exercise is really what it's about.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Intuitively, it made sense to me that, you know, it doesn't seem healthy for people to do, for instance, 3 or 4 Ironmans in a year. It didn't really connect with my logic per se. But I think, and that's because it's chronic, all the training, heartbeats, and of course, participating in 3 of those events or ultra running. All I've done now is I've since I was 50, I said, look, I want to try something new every year instead of going back to XTERRA, for instance, and just that's my race kind of thing. And that's my personal Olympics. But I vowed when I turned 50, I was going to try to do something new every year, whether it was a race or whether it was basically maybe running the Grand Canyon, for instance. Some of them were longer in preparation, you know, like you were saying, a little bit more of the ultra side, and others weren't as long as that. It was just more of a new venue or a new experience or something that we can participate. And sometimes, certainly the goals before were to travel more of the world, but right now we're realizing, goodness me, there's so many things locally that we haven't seen, that we haven't done, that we haven't ran or mountain biked or hiked or any of those sort of things. So that's kind of where my head's at, not just from the performance standpoint, but finding something new and exciting that I can be excited about to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I went from, I think when I moved out there, literally within a matter of a few weeks, they had me in the relay from Banff to Calgary relay, and they had decided that the leg Scott needed to do was the Scott Hill leg, which to me was, I'm looking at a map, right? Whatever. And every time I drive there to have the kids, this is the one they made me run up. But things like death races, right? I remember when I tried that the first time I went out for training with a group, I didn't realize how spoiled I was by all the nice paved paths and roadways and things when I went to do that, and all the water thing, I'm going to go around it, and you realize. But it's a great example of a very different experience. And what I take away from that really had very little to do with the exercise. It was the things out in nature,
right?
Like the grizzly, fresh grizzly prints, and the cougar prints, and and you're an hour or two away from civilization, and realize, I didn't really plan for this, and I don't really have a backup plan for it.
Yeah, the emotional side of choosing an endurance challenge that really puts you a bit on edge, which is good because then you're going to do the preparation. not only the training, but obviously all the logistical things. So for instance, I was hoping to run the Grand Canyon. I've done it rim to rim, stayed the night, and then ran back. I've done that 3 times, but my goal this year was to try to do rim to rim to rim, which I believe is about 76 kilometers ish, and it's about 10,000 vertical feet. So, that's kind of indirectly what I'm training for now, with potentially the probability of going there and doing it. But, it's emotional. I mean, you're down in the canyon, no cell reception. You're in the middle of nowhere. The only way of getting out really is to get out, like run or hike out. And then, of course, as you drop down and crawl up the other side, so to speak, you're only halfway. Duration wise, you're looking at an average of 10 and a half hours, maybe up to 12 hours. And so it's funny, oddly enough, it excites me because it's something new, and it's something that is going to challenge me physically and mentally, and likely emotionally as well. But I likely only choose one of those a year.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of athletics in any form, is there are just so many things to do when you actually stop and say, because each one leverages into something else.
Yeah.
Right. That's you look at so many cyclists out there. Well, they leverage their running into cycling, and most often we'll tell you most cyclists are an injured runner.
Right. Exactly. I know. Well, and I get that. And, as you know, too, as we age, the component of trying to go faster, running a 10K faster or cycling faster or swimming faster, it sort of falls out of the equation. And we tend to gravitating into going longer, or like you said, seeing the world, seeing Mother Nature more, a little more relaxed, lower heart rate. But sustainability is the key word, is sustainability. And even in life, like you say, the sustainability to be functional and reap the best benefits of being alive, that's pretty much the same thing. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Whether your heart rate is 120, 130, 140 is not going to have any influence on what that experience was, right? So if you dial it into something that makes sense, that's the piece you take away from it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, that's excellent. So what's a typical week look like for you these days? And I don't know where you are in training for anything, where that plays into it, but
yeah, a typical week for me now is a lot of Zoom, like we're doing. However, it's an environment where I'm actually leading a group of cyclists via Zoom. I've got a trainer in my studio, of course, and a big screen, and I usually create these workouts. And so I do that 5 times a week. 2 of them are relatively intense, and there's another 2 or 3 that are mild. So I won't even break 120 beats a minute, for instance. And so that falls into that category of like, what's the optimal balance of intensity and duration? And that tends to work well for me. So I sort of do that. I do like Tuesday, Thursday nights are hard intervals on the bike. And then Wednesday and Friday mornings I ride easy. And then the weekend depends on our weather. And as you know, our activity is directly associated to weather. I mean, if it's going to be a nice day, as a group, we need to get outside. If it's not going to be a nice day, then I'll lead them through a longer workout, say another 2, maybe 3-hour creative bike conditioning, swim band pulls, all those sort of things. And so that's been my life over this last year with this pandemic. Again, we're missing out on our team swimming and all that coaching that I would do on that standpoint. But yeah, that's my work sort of side. But personally, again, I am hoping to go to the Grand Canyon. So I mentioned to you the other day that last weekend we went to Sulphur Mountain in Banff, beautiful hike. And basically it's 5 kilometers going up about 680 meters, whatever, if that's 1,500 feet or so, to the top. And then you can take the gondola down if you want, or you can retrace your steps back. And so when you finish the trail, walk up and down, it's 10 kilometers. And so our goal was to try to do 6 laps. And so when you do the math, I covered 4,200 meters vertical gain and loss, which is just over 14,000 feet. And it took me about 10 hours. And so today I'm finally walking normal. And you just go, what was I thinking? Why was I doing this? But I had another 5 athletes that did it with me for the total 6. And then I had a whole group of people that decided they were going to do 3 laps, 4 laps, or even 5 for that matter. But certainly wouldn't be something I would do on a regular so-called season. It's only in preparation for the Grand Canyon, of course, which I find is a fairly extreme endeavor. So, do the work. It's not something I would do that often. I would probably do it every 6 weeks or something of that nature. But that will be my last big push if I decide to get to the Grand Canyon in May. So that's been my week or month, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's a great, I think one of the cool things about coaching, and I mean, anywhere or anyone training, is being creative,
Mhm.
right? It really keeps it fresh and new, and particularly with endurance, we've talked about this before. This is the part to have fun, right?
Yeah.
The race is its own thing,
Yep.
but it's really, you start to fall in love with the training, with the routine, with every week. As I said to somebody the other day, I said, the highlight of my week was my 90-minute run on Sunday morning with my wife.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's, yeah, and I couldn't, when I was 40 before I got going, I couldn't imagine that would just seem ridiculous that
Yeah.
anyone would think that was fun. And why would they do it? So I'm over 60. And it's funny how skewed our beliefs are until we actually kind of go down and test them and
Yeah.
discover that, yeah, no, this actually really is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. And 2020 was a little bit of a blessing in the fact that we didn't have races that we were so focused in the preparation, the training. So when you're in a training cycle and your race is a month away and someone asks you, "Hey, do you want to go out to the mountains and do a 6 to 10 hour hike?" You're just like, "No, I can't because it doesn't fit in my training preparation." Well,
Yeah.
last year we had no races. So one of the most memorable thing that my team did is we cycled from Jasper to Banff in one day, and it was 305 kilometers, somewhere around there. It was over 9 hours of training, but we had a group of 15 riders, Scott, and it was the best day ever.
Yeah.
We had beautiful sun, warm temperatures, maybe even a little bit of a tailwind, but by far that was one of my most memorable days on a bicycle, I would say, in the last 20 years, hands down. It was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, the scenery for people who have been to Banff, as beautiful as Banff
Oh,
is just something else again. Once you get past Lake Louise and start to head up the parkway there, it's just that the mountains get bigger, the roads get quieter.
yep.
It is just it's a magnificent piece of
Yeah.
paradise up there. If you get a nice day, it's
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Super memorable, lots of memories. And it's just, planning and executing and just going out and enjoying the day. Yep.
Yeah, it's no, that's awesome. And you've obviously done a lot of this in terms of planning with camps and things. I think again of places where you
Yeah.
left breadcrumbs. I remember we were talking about a camp you used to be involved in down in Solvang with Chuck EV. I think I don't know whether I had my Chuck EV cycling jersey on or something. But you're still involved in camps. What have you got going on with training camps these days, or kind of typically anyway?
Yeah. Yeah. Coming off Solvang, when we were doing the camp there, we found that I think we did that for 5 or 6 years, which was fantastic. And then I decided to move my camp up to or over to Maui. My preference is, of course, being closer to the ocean as triathletes and as a water person, so to speak. And so every year, I think we've done it for 10 years, except for, of course, last year, we tend to do a camp usually in March in Maui. And again, it's just that carrot as a northern climate triathlete and amongst my clients as well. We needed something that would be a bit of a reward to break up the winter. And so Maui was the perfect location for us. A quick direct flight, bam, you're there in 7 hours. You could even be on the beach by 2 o'clock if you really wanted to. And you just really can't beat the venue there personally. Having the ocean, mild temperatures, predictable temperatures, of course. The cycling can be a little bit extreme, meaning very hilly. There are some flat sections. There's even some bike paths. A lot of people don't know that. So if they're not really savvy with the technical side of cycling, they can go on the bike paths. Of course, the hiking is phenomenal. Haleakala is quite an accomplishment. I know in my younger days, when I was in 2025, I think one of my top 5 bucket lists was to cycle the Haleakala ride from Paia to the top, at 10,000 vertical feet on a bicycle, however many hours, it didn't matter. I needed to do it. And since that time, I think I've done it 12 times. And so I prefer to do my camps in Maui again. And Penticton is the other venue that I like to go to, of course. We like to circle back there. So we actually plan to go there May long weekend this year and have an informal camp, social distance, do everything correctly, and obviously get people prepared for the new Ironman Canada course so they can take a quick look at that as well. So those are my 2 main camps right now. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I've got a long story about getting to Penticton on a May long weekend with the mudslides.
Oh, right.
So hopefully it's not too nice of weather leading up to it. That's where we had to actually wait for 5 hours and then turn around and go the long way around. It was a long trip.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I like the Hawaii. So put me down for the Hawaii. Yeah, it's got so much to offer for everybody, right? Because part of what I think with camps is there's a camaraderie that doesn't happen at work, doesn't happen with family, and you come together with a bunch of strangers often. I would go down and sign up for a camp. That Solvang camp was down. I went down with a friend from Calgary, but we knew nobody.
Right.
It was just a great week, and I've gone to camps on my own, and it's so freeing to meet people all kind of with the same interest, which is part of it in longevity. We talk about finding your tribe.
Yes.
And that is the beauty when you go someplace. Kind of doesn't matter what your job is. Nobody cares. Nobody cares whether you own an airplane or whether you live out of a trailer when you go back home.
Yep.
It's very, it really levels the field for everybody. And I think it's a really nice way to kind of reset life.
Yeah. And if someone races all the time, when you go to a camp, obviously you don't have the anxiety and the stress of a race. It's just every day is a new adventure. Every day is, like you said, bonding with someone new and realizing, wow, you grew up there. I can't believe I grew up there, and then you have a contact or a life so-called training acquaintance that you could go and spend time with them, or go down to the US. For me, it would be go down to the US and meet some of my ex-athletes that are, down in San Francisco or San Diego or who knows. Yeah, I agree.
Because you have athletes coming from all over, I presume, right?
We do. Yeah. We have, it's kind of 50-50, 50% of the participants from Canada and the other ones from US. We haven't really had anybody from Europe, but needless to say, it's a great way of bringing like people, like you said, together and just having a lot of fun. Yeah.
And what sort of ages are people who show up?
Often there's very few in the 20s, some in the 30s. So it's 30, 40s and 50s, a lot in that 40 to 50 range. And again, that comes back to this life kind of transitions. You've kind of probably gone through, the kids are grown up, career's going well, some money in the bank. It's kind of like, okay, now I've got the opportunity to live a little bit more and experience something completely different. Going to a camp, all the details are organized, it's safe, everything is planned out with obviously options to change things up a little bit. But you walk away from that going, geez, that was just so much fun. And then we've had the same campers come back for 5 or 6 years in a row. Yeah, they just love it.
Yeah, I've seen the same pattern at every camp I go to. For whatever reason, there's a certain chemistry, there's a certain level of structure, but at the same time, it's for me, it's the ultimate vacation.
It is.
I would do that if we're going to a beach any day. And it was nice for especially early in the season, you're nowhere near peak fitness, which is fine, right? That's what you're going for. And it gives you that early season discipline of, kind of working your way through it. I remember, and you get to the last day and whatever's left, let it rip. That certainly for me was always fun to make it to the last day. And, okay, you made the turn to head home, whatever you got to give, you're safe now. You don't have to worry about showing up tomorrow. They are so much fun. I'm
Yeah.
thankful that you do that, because there are not many people who, again, are able to do that and do it well.
Yeah, thank you. And, we try to keep it affordable. Safety is a critical aspect to that. And obviously, Maui is just a great place that you can bring your spouse as well, and even your kids. We've had families come where, one of the adults is participating in the camp activities and the other one is taking the kids somewhere else, and then they'll switch, and it's not difficult for them to actually have a bit of a family vacation. But for active people, type A endurance athletes, they want to be active, and that's pretty much what it's set up for. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, it's active or you're recovering.
Right. Yeah, I know.
Which you truly are recovering at that point. You're just all kind of, everybody's bagged out the same. Nobody's giving you a hard time to go. So
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
that's awesome, Cal. This has been just so good to talk to you again. I'm thankful that today we can share it with everybody, just to get a flavor and some insights into kind of some things maybe that they're looking to expand their world a little bit, kind of do something with their health, not just be healthy, but actually do things with it and at the same time promote health. I think it's just just such a beautiful venue that you offer.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless. And, if you chip away at something that's positive, building health and fitness every day, it's remarkable what you can achieve. And then, yeah, if you do choose something that's one really big, epic, emotional sort of goal, that'll keep you on the straight and narrow. And I think that's the key, is just really identify, in advance, 3, 4, 5 months down the road, what really would be really neat for you to experience something new in life, and then prepare for it. And then there's massive satisfaction with that. That's pretty much why we're here on this planet, is just to experience the challenge and seeing Mother Nature and really enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Mother Nature in her element. You're a visitor and you get reminded of it on occasion, right? That's great. Well,
Absolutely.
thanks, Cal. It's again just a pleasure, and look forward to a healthy training season for you and all your athletes going forward here.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Scott. Thank you so much. And I love your podcast. It's so meaningful, and I hope more and more people listen to it on a regular basis.
Great, thank you. It's great to get good feedback, and I think it's unique, and be able to offer people like you to be able to share insights on all sorts of things. So this is the unexpected part of my work, doing this sort of thing that I had no insights into, and it's a lot of fun. So thank you.
Right. Much appreciated, though. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.